Also around that time, and this was probably over the next sort of year really, there was a whole sort of situation. I learnt so much about myself. One of them, it was probably about a month after that happened, one of the top guys in British sport. He was the guy that had coached, amazing amount of Olympic champions. And you think, God, how did he do that? He probably had about 6 or 7 Olympic champions over the years. He was the person that runs sport. He would be the one that say, right, Gunnell, go and run in Bratislava tonight or whatever. Here's your ticket, off you go. And he was the big god of athletics. He was everybody used to sort of bow to almost. And he came up to me and he said, you're a great athlete, but you're the wrong size, you're the wrong colour. And he said, you're too nice, you're not aggressive enough. And I remember thinking, oh, he must know. He must, he's trained all these athletes to be the best in the world. These Olympic champions, he must know. But luckily, I only thought like that 30 seconds, 45 seconds. And I thought to myself, am I going to let that one guy influence my whole life? Am I just going to think, right, okay, let's listen to him and let's, settle for second best or whatever? How many people do we have around you that are, I realise now, especially within sport, that are willing to put you down, try and just knock you, just try and just knock you over the edge and don't really believe in you almost. And I just said to myself, I didn't shout at him, I didn't say I'm going to go out there and prove you wrong. I thought to myself, do you know what, I can do this. I can go out there, I can be that person that I want to be. Maybe I look back now and think, did he say it, do it for a reason? Because do you know what, it spurred me on. Maybe he knew what I needed. I don't know. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But it did the job. I was determined then. And as I said, it wasn't about talking about what you're going to do. It's about actually going out there and delivering it. We can all talk a good story, but it's actually going out there and delivering it. Also, in this whole year, started getting injuries and niggles and all these sorts of things. And I did feel like my whole life was just like a spiral, just going down. How many times do we go through situations and we just think we're so out of control? Situations within whatever we're doing, you just think, there's no positives, there's nothing happening here. And I was almost hating myself. I just couldn't get over these niggles and these injuries and questioning why I did all this. And in the end, I realised do you know what? The more that you think about those negatives, the more that you can pull yourself down. We're all born with this little voice that is in here. I call it the but if voice. Mine is like a little yellow duck. I don't know why. It's a male voice, not quite sure why. But it's about learning to shut that voice up inside your head. And the more that we listen to it, and that's what's happening in that year, the more that I was pulling myself down. It's one injury after another. I'm not as good as my last fight. All these sorts of things. And it's about learning to keep that voice quiet. It's about feeding yourself, do you know what? You can do it. And the more that you give yourself those positive voices, the more that you focus, going back to that goal, what that goal is. What is it that we're trying to achieve here? Not about what's actually going on and that whole spiral you're in. Bring yourself out of it. Think about what it is that we're trying to achieve in 6 months' time or whatever it may be. So finally managed to pick myself out about it and, as I said, learnt a lot about myself. It's how much of it is up here and how much we've got to look to that future. Also in that 4 years was trying to work out how do you go from being 5th in the world to 1st in the world? Because actually we're talking, hundredths of a second. There really isn't a lot that divides us when it comes to it. And I was thinking, well, do you know what? If I go out there, I can't train any harder. I'm training twice a day, putting 5 or 6 hours into the day. And I'm thinking, if I go out there and train any harder, my body's just going to break down. It's like that whole thing. If we work too hard, your body just breaks down. And I'm thinking, I can't have that because we end up with injuries and whatever it may be. So how am I going to get those tiny percentages? And I realised it's about looking your lives as a whole, looking about all those areas that get you to that line, and realising that actually you don't know everything. And really, in that 4 years, up to then, I had literally gone out and tried to find everything I could about what I should be eating, about, the psychology side of it, about all the physio side of it, and trying to learn everything about my sport. And then all of a sudden thinking, people specialise for years. People spend years at university or specialising it, and why am I trying to learn? I can't do that. And realising those small percentages are going to come from all those different areas. So I did. I spent that 4 years putting a whole team of people together to try and get me to that top, to get me into that first position. Nutritionist was one of the first people on board, and actually until I'd got this guy and spoken to him, I used to watch everybody else on the team. And I remember at a European Championship, one of the first European Championships I've been to, and it was when Daley Thompson was doing his thing and Steve Cram and all these people, and I used to watch them going to McDonald's the night before. And then they would come away and break world records and win all these championships. So I thought, fantastic. So for about 2 years of my whole career, and I actually won that Commonwealth Games, I was about 2 stone heavier than I was and should have been, really. I wondered how I ever used to get over those hurdles. So I realised that wasn't going to work for me. So I then thought, right, okay, watch somebody else. And then I watched Colin Jackson, 110 hurdler, breaking world records and all these sorts of things. And he would eat pretty healthily. And then 48 hours before he'd go out there and race, all he would have is coffee and chocolate. And I thought, oh, fantastic. Wonderful. And I had, honestly, the biggest headaches I'd ever had in my life, and just thought, do you know what, that's not going to work for me. So I did bring in a nutritionist, and he would get in all that healthy eating and whatever. I used to stand in front of one of those juicing machines, putting carrots in, apples in, wheatgrass. Anybody ever heard of it? Cows should be eating it. It was in there. And do you know, the bottom line is that I felt fantastic. Occasionally, very occasionally, I'd go out and have my crispy duck, which is still my downfall in life, to the point where I couldn't finish a training session the next day. I felt so lethargic, and made me realise just what we put in our body and how it helps us out there to refuel our body and deliver, and it just gave me respect for it almost. So that was it, the nutritionist. The other area was all of a sudden I'm thinking, do you know what, I've got to make sure that I've done every single training session. We've prepared properly for that games. And up until now, I'd find myself with little niggles, maybe a cold, and, sometimes have to miss 2 or 3 weeks of training. And I'm thinking, hang on a minute, that's 2 or 3 weeks that my opponents are getting over the top of me. Sandra Farmer-Patrick, my major rival, she could be out there doing 2 or 3 weeks extra training. I cannot let that happen. So it was about looking at ourselves professionally, and we got in a whole, the physio and all those sorts of things. And I used to end up having massage every day nearly, which you think might sound fantastic, but I can tell you absolutely killed me. Also, I would make sure that we would analyse our body. We would make sure that, we would get things in our shoes, video it, just being much more professional about it all. Just make sure that we look at ourselves, trying to prevent those injuries as much as possible, and just, making sure that we're 100% as much as we're giving ourselves a chance almost. So that whole team was building up around it. And as I said, my coach, he was a major, major influence in my life from that 14 years old. And I realise now it was about having respect for him. And if any of you are leaders or management, I think, I often think, how do you create that respect? How did he do that with us? And I realised that he treated us all as individuals. Sometimes we used to have probably 30 people in our training team. And all of us would have individual training programmes. He'd work very much on our strengths, but also on our weaknesses. And how he taught us to use, sometimes, criticism, which wasn't very nice, but to use it as a positive. He would give us the mindset, to the point where we were always asking questions, how can we improve? What is it that we can do? Using that negative feedback to our positive, trying to make us better, trying to improve as a person. And I think he listened to us. He was always on the end of the phone. He would always be there for us. He was always learning new techniques. He would be off, in Russia, learning different ways of how they were, even though he was at the top of his game, the best in the world as a coach, but he would be always forever learning as a person himself. And the thing to this day, I still don't know how he ever did it, that he had worked out with certain training sessions, certain races that I would do, that Olympic final in 1992 had to be my 13th race. He knew exactly that was when my body was going to be at its peak. One day, race too early, might be all over. One day less, whatever. And he'd worked out over the years, understanding us as a person, to get us in the right frame of mind and the right position on that right day.